For 189 years, 189, Buckingham Palace has been the home of the British monarch. Every king, every queen, every coronation, every celebration, every crisis, every moment that defined the British royal family for nearly 2 centuries has been anchored to that one building on the Mall in London. Queen Victoria moved in. King George VI held court there during World War II while bombs fell on London. Queen Elizabeth II was born there, gave birth to her children there, delivered Christmas messages from there, walked those corridors for 70 years as the most recognized monarch on the planet. And now, after spending nearly $500 million renovating every single inch of the place, King Charles has looked at Buckingham Palace and said, "No thank you. I will stay where I am." That is right. After a 10-year renovation, after £369 million, that is nearly $500 million of British taxpayer money went into replacing aging cables, lead pipes, outdated wiring, and boilers that had not been touched since the 1950s. King Charles and Queen Camilla have officially confirmed they will not be moving in. They are staying at Clarence House, the smaller, quieter residence they have called home since their marriage in 2005. And Buckingham Palace, freshly renovated, historically significant, instantly recognizable to every person on Earth, will essentially become a very grand office building and a very grand tourist attraction. Welcome back to the Marquee Report. I'm your host, and today we are unpacking one of the most significant royal decisions in modern British history. Because this is not just about where Charles and Camilla sleep at night. This is about what the monarchy is becoming, what it is choosing to leave behind, and what it might mean for the future when Prince William eventually takes the throne. This story has layers, and we are getting into all of them. Let's start with the facts, because the announcement came in a very specific context that adds enormous significance to this decision. King Charles and Queen Camilla will not live at Buckingham Palace when £369 million of refurbishments are completed next year, as revealed in the latest royal accounts published on June 25, 2026. So this was not a random announcement dropped on social media. This came out through the official Sovereign Grant Report, the annual document that outlines how taxpayer funding supports the royal family's official duties and the upkeep of the occupied royal palaces. This is as official as it gets. This is the palace telling the public, through its financial accounts, that the decision has been made. Permanently, the palace, which has served as the official London residence of the UK sovereign since 1837, will continue to be the administrative headquarters of the monarchy. But the king has decided that nearby Clarence House will remain his official home. And the official reason given? Greater public access. By not having the king in residence at Buckingham Palace, which would require significant security restrictions, the palace can be open to visitors for longer periods. More access, more tourism, more income for the institution. The landmark may now also be able to open for a longer period, generating more income. It currently opens its staterooms to visitors each summer and selected dates throughout the rest of the year. That is the official explanation, and it is a reasonable one. But when you dig deeper into the details, you realize there are several other, very human, very practical reasons behind this decision, and they paint a fascinating picture of the monarchy in 2026. Here is what the official statement does not quite say directly, but what royal insiders and reports make very clear. King Charles and Queen Camilla have lived together in Clarence House, which stands beside St. James's Palace and was once the Queen Mother's home, since their marriage in 2005. Now both in their late 70s, it is understood that neither wanted the upheaval of moving themselves and their staff across to Buckingham Palace. Both in their late 70s. A decade-long renovation finally finishing, and the prospect of uprooting an entire royal household, staff, security, operations, personal belongings, the entire infrastructure of a working monarchy, to move across London into a building that has essentially been a construction site for 10 years. When you put it in those human terms, It actually makes complete sense. These are not young newlyweds setting up their first home. These are two people in their late 70s who have a comfortable, familiar, well-established home that works, that they know, that their staff knows, that their security team knows. Why would you move? There are also security concerns that if the king was in residence at Buckingham Palace, it would limit the number of visitors as well as areas people could view. So the practical case builds even further. Charles living there would mean fewer tourists, fewer areas accessible to the public, less income, and more security complexity. While Charles staying at Clarence House means Buckingham Palace can essentially become the world's most famous working museum, hosting state events, garden parties, royal ceremonies, while also generating maximum tourist revenue. It is actually a pretty smart decision when you look at it that way. Emotionally complicated, historically significant, but practically very smart. Now let's talk about what Buckingham Palace actually looks like going forward. Because it is not being abandoned. It is not being sold off. It is not being turned into luxury apartments, though I am sure someone on the internet has already suggested that. James Chalmers, keeper of the Privy Purse, said, "This is both a change from the past and a recognition of the future." Let me be clear, however, that in all other ways, Buckingham Palace will continue to be both the ceremonial and operational center of royal life. It is, and will remain, Monarchy HQ, the crown jewel of our national buildings, with the sovereign standard flying proudly from the roof whenever His Majesty is in London. Monarchy HQ, that is the phrase they are using. And it is actually a useful way to understand what Buckingham Palace becomes in this new era. Think of it like a corporate headquarters that the CEO does not personally live in. The work happens there. The meetings happen there. The ceremonies happen there. The flag flies from the roof. But at the end of the day, the boss goes home somewhere else. The king will continue to host a range of events at the palace, from state banquets and garden parties to receptions and audiences with the Prime Minister and new ambassadors. And there is even a provision left open for the future. James Chalmers said, "The king and queen would have access to private rooms within the palace where they can retire during the course of a working day, and which could be utilized as potential residential accommodation in times ahead." That last phrase is interesting. Potential residential accommodation in times ahead, which is royal speak for William might eventually move in. We are leaving that door open. We are just not walking through it right now. Let's put this in proper historical context, because the significance of this decision cannot be overstated. Queen Victoria was the first monarch to use Buckingham Palace as the official seat of court in 1837. Since that moment, every single British monarch has called Buckingham Palace their official London residence. It has been the backdrop to some of the most defining moments in modern British history. The balcony appearances during World War II, the celebrations after victory in Europe, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, state funerals, royal weddings, coronations. Queen Elizabeth II was the last monarch to stay overnight at Buckingham Palace in March 2020, before she left for Windsor Castle to isolate during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in a sense, the palace has not been a true royal home for over 6 years already. Queen Elizabeth left in March 2020 and never came back to stay overnight. She passed away at Balmoral in September 2022, and Charles, who took the throne that same month, has been at Clarence House ever since. But there is a significant difference between a monarch temporarily being elsewhere and a monarch officially deciding never to live there again. One is circumstance. The other is a deliberate, permanent, historically significant break with nearly 2 centuries of tradition. And Charles has chosen the latter, deliberately, officially, on the record. Now here is the part of this story that genuinely shocked people, because it came completely out of nowhere and represents something that has never happened in British royal history before. In another change, the king has made history by becoming the first monarch to release his total personal tax payment. in a bid to ensure more transparency around royal finances. Charles voluntarily pays income tax on his private income and capital gains tax on relevant elements of his assets. The first monarch ever to publicly release what they pay in taxes. James Chalmers said, "When Prince of Wales, His Majesty disclosed his tax, and he has asked that we make public his combined income and capital gains tax payments as king. Today I can share with you that His Majesty's tax payable for 2024-25 was £12.9 million. If annual media league tables are to be believed on such matters, that places His Majesty among the top 100 taxpayers in the country for that year. £12.9 million in a single year. And in total, King Charles has paid over $39 million in taxes since ascending the throne in September 2022. Think about what this means symbolically. For generations, the finances of the British royal family have been one of the most opaque, most debated, most controversial aspects of the institution. How much do they earn? How much do they pay in tax? What does the public actually fund? These questions have fueled Republican arguments, media investigations, and public debates for decades. And Charles, in a single announcement, has just answered the most personal of those questions, voluntarily, publicly, with specific numbers. That is not a small thing. That is a monarch who is very deliberately choosing transparency over tradition. And when you combine it with the Buckingham Palace decision, what you see is a king who is actively reshaping the public image of the monarchy around two specific values: accessibility and honesty. Let's talk numbers, because the financial story here is genuinely eye-opening. A 10-year refurbishment of Buckingham Palace, funded through a temporary increase in the sovereign grant which pays for the official duties of the royals, is due to be completed in March. The sovereign grant is essentially the taxpayer funding that supports the royal family's official activities. A temporary increase was put in place in 2017, specifically to fund the Buckingham Palace renovation, and now that the renovation is nearly complete, the grant is changing again. As the refurbishments come to an end, the overall level of the grant will fall from £137.9 million to £99.9 million in 2027-28. But the new figure will be almost double the core grant of £51.8 million in 2024-25. So the British taxpayer spent approximately £369 million renovating a palace that the king has now officially decided not to live in. That is a number that critics of the monarchy are going to latch onto very quickly, and the palace knows it, which is why the public access argument is so central to their messaging. The justification is essentially this: yes, the public paid for the renovation, but now the public will benefit from greater access than ever before. More rooms, longer seasons, more visitors, more income. Whether that argument lands with everyone, that is a different question, but it is a coherent one. And finally, the question that every royal watcher is already asking: what does this mean for Prince William? Because the official statements have been very careful to leave options open, the private rooms that could be used as residential accommodation in times ahead, the language about this being a recognition of the future, not just a change from the past. When William eventually becomes king, and the conversations around that transition have been accelerating given Charles's health struggles over the last 2 years, he will face a choice. Does he continue the Clarence House arrangement that Charles has now established as the new normal? Or does he move into Buckingham Palace, making the historic break with tradition Charles started into something even more permanent? William is younger. He has a family with children. He has shown a very clear interest in modernizing the monarchy, in stripping back some of the pomp, increasing accessibility, connecting with younger generations in ways that previous monarchs did not. Buckingham Palace, fully renovated, maximally accessible to tourists, operating as Monarchy HQ without a resident monarch, might actually be exactly the model William wants to inherit. An institution that is open, visible, and financially sustainable. Rather than a private royal home that limits public access and generates questions about privilege and cost, the decision Charles made this week may ultimately be less about where Charles wants to sleep and more about the kind of monarchy he wants to hand to his son. $500 million, 10 years of renovation, 189 years of history, and a king who looked at all of it and said, "I will stay home." King Charles just made one of the most quietly revolutionary decisions in modern royal history. Not with a dramatic speech, not with a public announcement designed to generate headlines, but through a financial document, a sovereign grant report that most people would never normally read. Buckingham Palace will not be a home anymore. It will be something new, something more accessible, something more public, something perhaps more honest about what the monarchy actually is in 2026. Not a private kingdom behind closed gates, but an institution that belongs in some meaningful way to the people who fund it. Whether that is enough for the people who question the monarchy's relevance, that debate will continue. But as royal decisions go, this one is genuinely historic. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Charles made the right call? Should William eventually move into Buckingham Palace? And does releasing his tax bill change how you see King Charles? I want every single opinion you have got. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you in the next one at the Marquee Report.